Okay, in this video we will be continuing on the beginner's guide to Pygame in the Python language. So if you're just starting out with this video, you will need to go to github.com, Programming Rainbow, the beginner's guide to Pygame, and you'll need to grab that URL and you will need to clone it and then move inside the directory. Since this is the third video, we'll be continuing on with the code from the second video. So if you go inside the video 2 folder and grab the main.py file and move that to the top level, and that's what we'll be working with. So in the last video, because I was showing how the icon displays and it kind of messes up my display manager until I reboot, we didn't change the title. So it should have been background. Should have been background, what colors, and icon, something like that. That's what the title of the last one should have been. Okay, and let's just show where we ended off in the code. It's Python main, and we have our Pygame, and we can change the color, and the title that we've changed is up here now. So in this one, we're going to make a true type font. We're going to make a text that's true type font style, and we're going to move it around the screen, and we're going to have some bounds, collision detection, and stuff like that. So the way that we make text, let me close this window real quick down here. The way that we make text is it's under the font, right here under font. We're going to first, before we make the text, we're going to load a font. So I'm going to skip down to where it says Pygame font and then Pygame.font and then .capital font. And we're going to use this to create a new font object from a file. So basically in our code, or in the repository that you cloned, we have fonts up here, a folder named fonts, and then inside of it we have free sans bold.ttf. Now this is the true type font that we're going to use. So this is the true type font that we're going to be using. Create our font, and then from that font we will then make a surface that has text. So first we make the font. So that's the font we're going to work with. And again, to make that, we are going to hold it in a font variable. So we'll call it self.font, and this will equal pg.font.capital font. And now let's look at the arguments that we need to put inside of here. So in here, it has the path to the actual font file that I just showed you, and then it has a size here. I'm not sure if this is a pixel size or a point size. I believe it's a pixel size, but let's try to find out. Size is the height of the font in pixels. Okay, so we are looking at a pixel size here. I'm just going to get back to that part that we saw. So we need the path, the relative path to the font that we want to use, and we need the size of the font, and that's going to return our font object. So we are going to use a font size of 60, and we're going to use this specific font right here. And this is a relative path, so it's going to be in fonts. And then free sans bold.ttf. And then after that, we need our font size, which is going to be 60. So this creates the font, but now what we want to do is we want to actually make a text surface from a font. So the way that we do this is, this is actually still a font. This is saved as a font. So there, in this same font thing, there's something else called font render. It's down here, and I think I've already have it opened right here. Yeah. So this draws text onto a surface. So this is going to take our text, take an option, whether it's anti-aliased, take a color, and this is a method on that font object that we just created. So we're using the font object that we created, the self.font, and then it'll be .render with the text, the aliasing, the color, And then this background none, we're not going to use this. We are going to use these three here. So we'll pick the text we want. We do want an anti-alias so it looks nice, and we will pick a color, and it'll just be white. I'm just going to put this in as a tuple right in place. Okay, so again, like I said, it's a method of this font that we just created, but this one I'm going to call text because we're going to capture it. Let's look again what it returns. It returns a surface. So we're going to call it self.text, and the text is not, that's just, I don't mean a texture, I just mean a surface that's holding a text, so I'm just calling it text. And now we're going to use that font that we just created above, the PG, or sorry, not PG, self.font, and then it's render. So what kind of text do we want to move around the screen? Well, this is Pygame, so let's move Pygame around the screen. And whether we want it anti-aliasing, this is a Boolean, so let's say true. And the color value, well, I want it to just be white, so I'm going to put 255.255.255. Now, this is going to return a surface, but remember up here when we were talking about surfaces, the background surface, we converted it to these higher quality surface that can draw quicker than a normal surface. So we can do the exact same thing with this, because this is returning a surface, but we can immediately convert the surface with the convert alpha. It's the exact same as the other one. So now this is going to be a high quality surface that we can draw quickly. Okay. Now I do want something else from this surface. I want a rectangle. So I know the width and the height. You know, I know not just the X and the Y, which is the top left hand corner. I can get the right or the bottom, you know, whatever I want from this surface. So I do want to capture that. So before we do that, let's just display it to make sure that it's all working correctly. So if we go down here to where we're drawing everything, before that we flip the display, let's do the self.screen split, just like before. And this one will be self.text, and we can split it in the top left hand corner. So we can just put 0, 0 for now, just to see that it has done what we wanted it to do. Okay, that should be enough to test it out. So I'm going to save it. And there we have Pygame. It's quite big. That's size 60 we're using, yeah. So I could change it down to maybe 50, make it a little bit smaller because Pygame is a large word. Let's try 50. That's a little bit better. Something anywhere in there is fine. So what we really want to do is be able to move this around the screen. I really want a rectangle from this. So this is a font, but down here is a surface. I believe we can get a rectangle from a surface. So if we go over here and we are at our surfaces, yeah, here's our get rect. So this is in the surfaces. So if you're at the very top up here and you go to surface and you click on it, there is a method on the surface called get_rect or get rectangle. Okay, and this is just a method called on the surface that's actually going to return a rectangle. And that's going to have an X and a Y, but it's also going to have a width and a height from it. So I'm just going to save this as text rect. We'll say self.text_rect. This will equal the self.text and we'll say get rect. And that should give us the rectangle, and we'll store it in this. Now we do want some other stuff. We want a velocity. We really want an x velocity to move it side to side, and we want a y velocity, move it up and down. But since we do want it to collide, we want to be able to change the x velocity from a positive to a negative and a negative to a positive, and the same with the y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make 3 velocities. One is just a velocity that it just holds the actual speed of something. And then the x one is going to hold either a positive or negative version of that, and the y one will also hold a positive or negative version of that. So it's just going to be simple. So I'm just going to make 3 velocities. So we'll call it self.text. I'll just call it vel, and it's going to equal 3. That's not what I wanted. And then on these second 2, I'm just going to set them to what the text vel was. This one will be x vel, x velocity. I'm just going to have it equal self.text vel. And the same with the y. Okay, so that's going to give us our velocity, but really our x and y velocity that we want. And we have a rectangle. So what we need to do is we need to move it. And now we have this update down here. And I can just make a new update and then tell this update, or I can just repurpose this update. So I'm just going to repurpose it. Instead of having a text update and then calling it in this update, and then having a sprite update and then calling it in this update, I'm just going to change this to update text. And down here, I'm going to rename it update text. And then for the sprite one, we'll just make a sprite one, and that'll be fine. So the first thing we'll want to do is let's just update the x. So we have the self.text rect x. So let's look at the rect real quick. So we know we returned a rect, but let's just look at, we should have a separate rect. Should have opened it up. Here it is. So rect is going to give us a couple things. It should give us like an x and a y and a whole bunch of all these things. We have access to all of these. So we have an x and y, we have a top, a left, right, bottom, top, left, right, all kinds of good stuff here. So I'm going to just be using the simplest of all of them. If I want the right out the right or the left, So yeah, that's going to work just fine. So I do have x, and now I'm just going to increment it by velocity, but x velocity, not the normal velocity. Okay, I'm just going to show this so we can make sure that this is working. And what I need to do is actually use this rect down here when we're blitting it. We have just put in this tuple, but instead of putting this tuple in, we can actually just put the rect in. And that should be there still. And now this rect in place here is going to provide the x and the y, the position that is in the rect that we are incrementing with this update. So let's just make sure that works, and our text should be moving to the right. Okay, it's moving to the right, and then it's going to just keep about right on going right off the screen. Okay, so now let's try to make it bounce off the side of the screen. So let's run a check on that. say if self.text rect x is less than 0. This is if it's going the other way. Well, I mean, we could check the right side. So we could say rect, is it right? Yeah, let's say right. And we could check the right against the width, but we can just check it against this constant up here. So I'm just going to do that since it's already available to me. So we could say if this is bigger, then, so it's the right side of the rect. If the right side of the rect is bigger than the window width, then it's starting to go off the screen on the right side. So that would be width. And if that did occur, I just want to reverse the direction that it's moving. So all I need to do is reverse this x velocity. So I'm going to set this to the negative version. Equals self, negative. Let's see. Hopefully I've done that. I cannot remember Python if I can just stick the negative in front. I believe I can. So let's just check it. And it is, even if it bounces off this, it's going to go off the other way because we only did one check on it. That's fine. I just needed to check if that negative was still relevant. So we can just put an else. Actually, I could have put an else above it to make the math a little bit easier. So I could have said if self.text rect.x is smaller than 0, and we'll we'll do the self.text xvel equal to self.text L. And then we'll run an elif on this. Okay, so that should have it bouncing back and forth, no problem. Okay, that's perfect. So let's now just make the y do the exact same thing. So we can just copy that code for the, I'm going to leave the 2 updates on top here. So I'm just going to copy this one right here, yank it and paste it. And we'll switch this to the y. And the y velocity. And then we can yank this right here. And change this to the y version of all of this. We have y here, and down here we're going to have instead of the right, we're going to have the bottom, and instead of width, we're going to have height. And this is, again, the y. Okay, so we should have the text now bouncing all around the screen. It looks like it's doing everything it's supposed to be doing. Should we try the 60 size font again? Up here. It seemed a little bit big to me, but I'm pretty sure it was originally just 60. Yeah, it's fine. And I just want to see where it's hitting from the start, where it's hitting the corner here. We're coming down and so if we move it, like say 200, if I initially switch this rect X 200 in, it might not hit that corner. It might just look a little nicer in the beginning. Yeah, it's a little bit. Okay, so you can kind of see those things working. So this one should be called moving text. So have we missed anything here? Let's see. We have created our font, and that gives us a font object by using a true type font and a size. And then we take this font object and we can render text with it with the aliasing turned on, and we've used the color white. And this is returning a surface, so we're converting the surface to the better rendering surface with alpha. If we don't do that, we'll get a black box with font in it, even if we change. So I'll just show you that real quick. Oh, it's a white box, sorry. So that's no good. You do want to have the alpha. If we remove the whole convert thing, it'll look correct again, but it won't be accelerated. So I'm going to put that back to alpha. So we are creating this surface using font render with the string, with aliasing turned on, with the color white. And since this is returning a surface, we're immediately converting the surface to the better version of it and storing that in text. And then we can use a method on text objects to get the rectangle of them. And we're storing that into the text rect. And then we're just offsetting I'm just making the rectangle start 200 pixels over from the left side. And I'm creating this velocity here, and the X velocity and Y velocity are just set to those. So in the update, I'm just incrementing the X by the X velocity and the Y by Y velocity, and then doing some simple checks, and then making sure that it's moving in the opposite direction when it does hit one of these bounds. And I'm using width and height because they are already, but you can use methods to actually get the width of the screen. But since I already have them up here, it's just quicker to use those. But the other versions are still available to you though. And we did repurpose this update from update to update text. And down here as well, update text. And I think that's about it for this one. Okay, so I think that's it for this one. We've changed the title up here. So that is how to create a font, how to turn the font into text that's a surface, how to move that surface around the screen with a rectangle, and how to check bounds and have it, bounce off the wall and stuff like that. And we also used a new way of blitting now, where we have used the rectangle instead of just an X and a Y here. So that shows you how to use a rectangle. And I think that's going to be about it. So I hope you enjoyed that one. So again, thanks for watching, and bye.